Walker Griffon is 23 years old, so it would not surprise me if Walker, you sent your DNA into 23andMe, didn't you?
Oh, yikes.
I know you did. I know you sent I know you just randomly sent a blood sample to a private organization and gave them possession of your genetic DNA material for perpetuity.
You can't see him, but he's laughing.
Yeah.
They have it all.
They have it all. Yes. You know what? We are Implicit Bias Radio, and yes, we have it all here in the Mr. Lester's Top Secret podcast lair. As I was wondering what that was in the background, you probably, I don't know if you can hear the sirens going by the TSPL located somewhere in Lafayette, Louisiana.
It's Ohio players.
Yeah. Okay. So that is Rene Girard, Louisiana's only certified master tobacconist, one of only 15 in the world. Grant Galatas of William S. Nacol Jewelers owns the bar tonight. Yeah, double fisting it. And I'm your host, Kavan Bordelon. We wish the Rustic Renegade the best as he is out this week running some security for some very special stuff. So we're really happy he got a chance to do that. 23andMe is the story that we have to touch on because I found it really, really interesting. We actually ran this story on the show when right after the 2024 election, like the entire board of 23andMe, I mean, turned into Kaiser Soze. It was like, you heard about them, but you never saw them anymore. They all vacated. They all resigned, which was the big thing. It's not like they just all were fired or they ran into issues. They all resigned. So now here we are, 5 months later? And all of a sudden, 23andMe is bankrupt and looking to sell you.
Yeah. All those records, all those DNA records, everything. Yeah, what's going to happen to that?
They got approval from a judge.
To sell off any assets.
And they consider your genetic profile, you. They own you.
Yeah. That's why I never submitted to any of those things. I keep my DNA where I know it is.
Look, they own the very essence of you.
Renee, I don't even want to think about where your DNA is. That's a whole nother discussion.
Look, they don't just own you, they own the very essence of you.
Yes.
You don't even have to be present. You could be present through what they own of you. Conceptually, this just frightens me.
So there is a very funny video circulating on the internet right now that I find it's a riot. And it's these people sitting around a table and the first person says, "Oh, I sent my information in and I am 40% German and I am 60% Swiss." And the next one says, "Well, I'm Spanish and this." And the next one says, "I'm this." And the last one says, "I'm 92% dumbass." Why? Because I took my blood sample, sent it to a private company, paid them to take over, possess, and maintain my genetic material and to be able to sell it to the highest bidder for whatever reason they might want to use my DNA. She's like, "Really? Are we doing this?" And it's funny because it's true.
Yeah.
Who thought this was a bright idea to be like, "Oh, I'm just going to take literally the one thing that they should not be able to take away from you, put it in a private catalog."
Yeah, but they'll tell you what percentage of what nationality you are and where you came from and all that other stuff. But,
I believe
information you got to find out for yourself.
Well, not just that. I also believe there's a saying for that, right? About, your genetic nationality and all that. And I believe it's who gives a
Exactly. You are what you are.
You are what you are. And think about it this way. It took advantage of, and if you did it just because you were curious, I don't mean this to be offensive. They took advantage of the dumbest of the dumb.
Well,
and here's why. They took advantage of those who had no identity.
Right.
They don't have their own personal identity, so they have to rely upon everybody else who came before them. It's the basics of identity politics. It's the basis of my individual identity is not made up by some person who left France or was in France, somewhere around Normandy, circa 14 something, because we looked this up.
Well, that, and I've read stories about people have found relatives they didn't know existed.
They've found criminals.
Well, yeah.
That's
but
the
that
aspect
too.
I love. That's fascinating because they track down a couple of serial killers in Los Angeles or in California somewhere based on the genealogy of everyone in a certain area. And they filter it down. I don't know how it works, but I find that utterly fascinating. They had one serial killer that got away with it for decades. And then once somebody submitted their DNA,
I believe
they
it
were
was a
able to-
sister. I believe it was like a sister or
Right.
something. And what they did was they
That
looked
they
at
had
the
submitted their
Correct.
DNA to.
the sister submitted the DNA
Right.
for markers, and it popped because they ran it against the database, and they said, wait a minute, this person shares familial DNA
Correct.
with a suspect that we have been looking for in like 9 murders.
Yeah, well, that's one good thing from that.
It is.
that it really changed the face of criminology. Because once you had DNA and you had DNA records, they actually had cold cases, just like the serial killer case, where once they started doing the DNA type matching, they were able to pull old cold cases and see if the DNA caught a hit on anybody previously submitting their DNA.
But is
That's one benefit from this thing. That you can catch
and this is what bothers me, because I do agree with you. I think that's a great thing. But the willing surrender of your privacy, of your own privacy.
No, that's incorrect. It's not the willing surrender. It's the willing that you paid to have this
Yeah.
done, because they don't do this for
For a
free.
price.
You have to send them money
And 4% more if you paid with a credit card.
Yeah.
But I guess that's my point, right? Which is we have the opportunity to be independent, to be unique individuals on this planet.
Yeah.
And there's only so much stuff that are actually ours, that actually belongs to us. And the marketers figured out a way to convince people to not just give it away,
Pay
but
them.
to pay them to take this from you.
Yes.
I mean, if you really stop and think about this, there's a saying that if something comes to you and it's free, you are the product. And social media has shown this because they keep a file on you. They give you games for free. They give you apps for free. They give you Facebook. They give you Instagram. They give you all this stuff
And
for
they're
free.
selling all that.
And they're taking every bit of information about you. They are creating a digital DNA file and selling it.
So
You
now,
are now paying for your physical DNA. So now the question is there a database on the back where they're trying to match your physical and your digital and merge it into one?
well, my question is, why are they going bankrupt then? They have all this information that we paid, or I didn't, but somebody paid them.
I think I'm going
And-
to sneeze. USAID. Sorry. Don't convince me that the whole thing, I mean, I know people
Yeah.
will say you're a conspiracy theorist. We've been right on a lot
it's
more
not a-
stuff than you want.
It's
My-
not a theory
Correct.
anymore. We've proven it's
Correct.
not a theory.
My point is, I have to wonder if there weren't governmental subsidies
Oh,
in order
sure.
to do this, in order to convince you
because
to sell off your DNA.
they run a lot of ads on various media outlets, and that's how people would send all their stuff in $99 or whatever.
Is that what it cost?
At one point, it was 99. Then they would run sales for like 39. But yeah, it was not like $5. It was more than that.
No, I was thinking it was like 25 or 30 bucks
No,
or
it
something
was
like this.
Originally, when they started out, they were like $99, and then they would run sales for like $39, $49.
You know what this reminds me of, Renee? What this reminds me of is when I worked in news here in Lafayette many, many years ago, email was just really starting to be a thing. And one of the ways that they would bust deadbeat dads and criminals is they would send them an email that was basically a phishing email that said, hey, you've won a big screen TV. Show up at the Holiday Inn on the Evangeline Thruway at this date and this time. And when they walked in, they're like, hey, I'm sorry, your name? And they'd identify themselves and they're like, you can go right back in. And the second they hit the door, there's like 6 deputies like, you're under arrest.
Yeah, it wasn't just deadbeat dads. It was anybody with a warrant.
Correct.
Yes.
It was outstanding warrants.
And
Oh,
they would show up in droves.
they would rack up on a bunch of
I
them at
covered
once.
3 or 4 of these, and I actually looked at a sheriff's deputy and said, how many times are you going to do this before they stop showing up? And he
Many as we can.
goes, we've been doing this for a couple of years. They keep coming.
Yeah.
I mean, I was like, you've got to be, that's what this reminds me of the government going, how do we get people to turn in all their DNA?
Yeah.
Here's how we do it. You know what? We're not asking you to give us your genetic material. Trust me, we don't want that. What we are asking you to do is stick around for the penultimate segment of this week's episode of Implicit Bias Radio after this.